Today on Church Public, current events from a Christian perspective, literal gaslighting, or actually not. The conspiracy that was banning gas stoves we talked about a couple of months ago has now come true in New York. We'll talk about that today. Also, Whoopi Goldberg tries to convince us that the Bible says kids should be trans. I'm going to need to see the verses on that one. Meanwhile, a huge event called SatanCon, yes, you heard me correctly, SatanCon, happens in Boston, and it shows how much this culture is, well, just demonic. And a young student gets removed from school for wearing a based t-shirt, but then gives a speech that would make, I would say, any father proud. All this and more today. I'm Ed Odegaard, and this is Church Public. As always, welcome back to Church Public, audio and listener. I love you. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on video, thank you as well. I really appreciate you watching. If your audio listener want to watch on video, just know there's a video out there. You can find it. You can find it on the socials, on the interwebs, in the tech platforms. You can find it at churchpublic.com if you haven't been there before. If you missed any episodes, you can go back in the archives on any of your podcast players, audio or video, or you can go to churchpublic.com because the episodes are there as well. If this helps you and you want to like and subscribe and hit the notifications and send this to a friend because you think, hey, this is something my friend want to know, please do that. I appreciate it. This is a labor of love, and I just want to help you live out your faith in whatever arena that you are in, whether that's at home with your family, great. Whether it is at church, I think your church needs to know some things and do some things. Again, reading the Bible and doing what it says, but also the other areas. That's the thing. We've been told over and over and over again in not so many words and then so many words that you're only allowed to have faith in your house or in your church. But you're not allowed to have faith at school. You're not allowed to have faith in your workplace. You're not allowed to have faith in these other areas of your life where you just live. But faith is faith. You take it where you go, everywhere. It's part of who you are. Your beliefs are part of who you are, and you should be allowed to bring those wherever you want. Our founders of America knew that. That's why they wrote the First Amendment in the way that they did, so that you could live out your faith wherever you are. But this culture doesn't like that, and this culture doesn't like God. So we talk about that a lot through current events from a Christian perspective. We'll look at some Bible, we'll look at some other things today, but let's go ahead and get started with some news and talk about current events from a Christian perspective. All right, so today we're talking about literal gaslighting, or not. Gaslighting, as you know, or maybe you don't. I don't want to assume. I don't want to assume anything, and I want to help us all get to the same end and the same understanding of what's going on. So there was a movie where there was a husband, he was a terrible husband, and he kept every day, just, those gas stoves, we all have electricity everywhere and lights everywhere, right? But gas stoves were these little lamps, and they had the little knob on it. Maybe you remember from an old Western or something. And if you turn down the knob, the flame actually gets lower. So this husband, not great husband, in this play, in this movie, would just turn down the knob little by little every day. And the wife would go, "It feels like it's getting darker in here. Is it?" And he would go, No, it's all the same. You're just crazy. And he literally drove her crazy by saying, no, the light's the same, even though he intentionally was changing things and lying about it. So that's gaslighting. That's what we hear about all the time. You hear the term thrown around all the time. I just wanted to make sure we all understood that's what the term means. Literally lying about what's actually happening and what you're actually doing. So that's why this is a funny story, because it's kind of literal gaslighting, or the opposite, whatever that is. Because we were told a couple of months ago, we talked about this on the show at Church Public, that they said it's dangerous to have gas stoves in your house, so we're going to remove all the gas stoves from America. And we said, well, that's a terrible idea because, one, gas is very efficient, it's very economical, and it makes really good food. I like cooking with gas better. I know I don't do a ton of the cooking, my wife, my family does, but gas is just better to cook with, just period. It just is. Electricity, cooking on electric stoves, I just don't love it. Some people do, but I mean, watch any of the cooking shows. They are always cooking on gas stoves. Just saying. Anyway, then we heard this whole thing where the climate cult wanted to ban gas stoves, and everybody said, no, that's not happening. You guys are just crazy. We would never ban gas stoves. That's just insane. So we have this video from our friends at Grabian. Well, let's just watch this, and then we'll talk about what's going on. Here you go.
For your gas stove. That is a new and absolutely ridiculous one.
Turns out Fox News and Republicans are up in arms because they say the government is coming to take your stoves.
The GOP have been stoking a ridiculous new freakout about gas stoves. No one is taking your gas stove.
The right-wing freakout over the use of gas stoves is merely the latest in a long series of made-up culture war battles designed to enrage and rile up their right-wing and paranoid base.
This administration's coming to take away your gas stoves.
Republicans have turned a government warning about your health into a lie about Democrats trying to take your stoves.
You and I will be able to drive through parts of the country 10 years from now, and people will be saying, do you remember back when Joe Biden was in office and they tried to take away our gas stoves?
Moments later.
New York City is moving to snuff out gas stoves.
New York becoming the first state to ban natural gas and other fossil fuels in most new buildings, including gas stoves. The new law requires all electric heating and cooking in new buildings shorter than 7 stories by 2026.
Governor Kathy Hochul and the Democratic-controlled state legislature approved a bill on Tuesday prohibiting the use of fossil fuels for heating and cooking. The law is the first statewide ban in the nation and goes into effect in 2026 for buildings.
So there you go. We are definitely not coming for your gas stoves. We are not gaslighting you at all, but we will actually take your gas stoves away. I'm sorry, what? The new $229 billion fiscal year budget in New York was approved by Governor Kathy Hochul and the Democratic-led legislature and contains a provision that bans gas stoves. Yes, you heard it. Gas stoves from new residential buildings. Also bans furnaces and propane heating, which, of course, we know being warm is nice. Having lived in the north of America, you know, the top part of America, actually like right near Canada for a little while, it does get cold there, and it is quite nice to have warmth. I mean, I can even say this is personal and this is anecdotal, but I had one of those. I mean, you probably saw Home Alone, right? You saw Home Alone when he walked down the stairs and there was the crazy monster that he met in the basement, right? That like was gnashing and it was like, krrr, 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 right? And that was the boiler that uses natural gas to heat water to create heat for the house. I actually had one of those. It was very similar to that movie. And I said, this can't be the best way to do it. It's got to be better to heat my house with electricity. So I talked to several contractors, HVAC and efficiency experts, and they were like, no, the way your house has gone, like if you switch to heat, it would be quadruple or 10 times the price of this gas boiler that you have. And I said, oh. So, again, that's anecdotal. You don't have to take anecdotal stories as gospel truth, but I'm just saying in a lot of areas like this, using gas is the most efficient way to heat your home, as well as the deliciousness of cooking your food over a gas fire. But Kathy Hochul said, just like we had to a long time ago transition from coal as your energy source, we do have to transition. There are clean energy alternatives. Again, that's Kathy Hochul in an interview with Fox 5 New York. So I know that's just a funny story, but it's just another example of how they continually gaslight you and say something isn't happening until it is, and then it really is good. In other news, meanwhile, a recently published CDC report states that 1 in 4 high school students in the United States identify as homosexual or bisexual. Here, if you are just an audio listener, I'm showing a kind of a bar graph that Statista has put out that shows the levels of LGBT by birth year, by generation, Gen Z, Millennial, Generation X, Baby Boomers, Traditionals. And you can see the way that it shoots up in the Gen Z generation. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because I've talked about it a bunch before, but I think it's something we need to pray about, something we need to figure out how to talk about in an appropriate and truthful and graceful way. And 2, something that we need to understand. And if you don't think, like, look at this chart. I know, audio listener, you can't see it, but I mean, you can see the numbers of LGBT across generations, 4 generations, right? And even this chart only goes back to 2014. So that's not that long ago, less than 10 years. And yet we're up to 25%. And this new CDC report that's not pictured here says that 1 in 4 high school students identify as LGBTQAAIP #++ $! They identify as this. And so if you don't think this is a social contagion at this point, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it clearly is something that people are talking about in schools, on social media, in the mainstream media, in Hollywood, on all these shows that I've given you all over the place. I mean, if you don't think that the kids are influenced by what they are seeing, watching, and experiencing all around you to become like this, because that's what's mainstream, I don't know what to tell you. This is just clear. Anyway, let's keep going because we got some fun other things to talk about today. Okay, so I don't even, whatever. We're going to talk about this. So Whoopi from The View, I don't want to talk about The View anymore, but we just have to because they say things. And you know what? Here's the deal. Like, you think, well, nobody actually watches The View, but apparently they have an enormous audience. And there are a bunch of people, like millions of people, who do watch this show. So it is culturally relevant. And we can then talk about current events, this culture from a Christian perspective, and we have to. So Whoopi says that the Bible tells us very clearly to trans your kid, I guess. Let's watch this and we'll talk about it a little bit.
Oh my God, this is a party that says we believe in parents' rights. You're telling me that as a parent, I'm not smart enough to decide if my child and I need to have gender affirming. Our doctors are not involved. What is going on? So I can't decide what my kid reads. I can't decide for my child what my child says is going on. You're telling me your beliefs, and they keep saying it, and I keep saying, what Bible are you reading? Because God was really clear.
Very clear.
So I don't know about you. You know, you can go and watch that whole episode if you want to, but she doesn't come back to that. So I don't know about you, but I didn't hear a verse there. I've got my Bible open right here. I do, right here next to me. And I read it a lot. Actually, I pretty much read it every day. You know, sometimes I've had days where I don't, read as much, and sometimes I read more, but I read it pretty much every day. I don't know what passage she's talking about where the Bible is really clear that you should be able to transition your kid medically or surgically from male to female. I don't see that. In fact, it just happens to be open right here. This is Genesis 1. That's just where I've been spending some time. This one right here says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. That's just right there. That's Genesis 1. I don't know if you can see. Again, this is the very beginning of the Bible, which is pretty clear to me. I'm citing the verse. I'm reading straight out of this Bible right in front of me in paper in black and white. And that doesn't sound like to me God made babies and then you get to medically transition them to whatever gender you believe is invented for them. Doesn't quite say that to me. In fact, I've read the whole Bible through more than once, and I haven't found anything like that. So, hey, if you're listening and you know where that is, send it to me. But yeah, I don't have that in there. Anyway, but here's a bigger thing. Here's a bigger thing that I think she's misunderstanding, and a lot of people misunderstand this because there's two issues going on here. One is people who think they know what the Bible says without actually opening the Bible, and that's I guess that's a pet peeve of mine. Like, if you're gonna quote the Bible, I would love to have you actually read the Bible that you're quoting. But hey, that's I feel like that's a good issue to get over. Like, just open it and read it, and then you can decide what it says. You don't have to agree with what it says. You can live however you want. I mean, that is the freedom you have. I think there are certain ways to live that are better than others, and that's what I'm going to support and encourage you to live like. But Here's the bigger thing that she's missing, because she's talking about rights. Again, we get into this rights conversation. Parents' rights. She says Republicans believe in parents' rights, that parents have the right to do certain things, and that is true. I believe that. I believe that parents do have the right to educate, to grow their kids. Again, we'll get back to Christian perspective, biblical view, right? Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. That's actually in the Bible. You can look that up, and that's the thing. So the part that she misses is, yes, a parent has a right to train their child. But I don't know if you heard the rest of that verse. In the way they should go. In the way they should go. What would that possibly mean? In the way they should go? That there is a way they should go. Like that's the piece that Whoopi is missing, that many people are missing. Parent has a right to do whatever they want. Well, kinda. But there are right things and there are wrong things. And she's obviously arguing that there's a wrong thing, that people who say you cannot transition your kid medically or surgically from male to female, that's wrong. I'm going to argue on the other side of that and say, because God has said he made people male and female, he created them, Genesis 1:27, as I just read that for you, I'm going to default to God, to tradition, to scripture, to history, to biology. I'm gonna go down to truth on that and go with, well, there is a right way, and the right way is what's scripturally true, what's traditionally true, what's biologically true, not what you have decided is true based on feelings, good thoughts, vibes. I don't know. This intrinsic idea that inside of you is some kind of secret person that needs to get out. And the only way to get that secret person out, even though you're born this way and you're born beautiful and you're enough, the only way to get that secret person out is to introduce medicine and hormones and all kinds of other things, and probably surgeries, because you don't actually look like you think you should look like. So you should change everything about you, and then you'll finally be who God made you to be. The logic of that, it's so full of mental gymnastics, it blows my mind. If you believe God didn't make a mistake, as one popular TikToker has said a few episodes ago, then you would be okay with who you are because that's who God made you. But in the same breath as you say, God didn't make a mistake with me, you say, and because God didn't make a mistake, I have to change everything about myself and the way that I look and the way that my hormones are inside of me and probably pieces of my body that I'm going to surgically remove or alter to make myself into what I think I should be because God didn't make a mistake. Do you not see how that is like logically two different ways? But I guess people don't. So here we are, and we have to say these things. So those are the two pieces, right? There is, hey, if you're going to quote scripture, I'd prefer if you actually quote it. Don't say God's very clear about the Bible saying this, but he didn't. And then secondly, when you talk about rights, yes, there are rights, but there are right or rights, and there are wrong things. If there's a right, there's a wrong, and you have to define, like, well, what is a right and where does it come from? And this group of people in the culture wants to say that rights come from me, from whatever I feel. You do you, you live your truth, and I'm going to create a right out of whatever I feel like in that particular day. I feel like I am a man and I should be a woman, so that is my right to do. No, that's not how rights work. Rights are created outside of you from something like a traditional foundation in scripture. That is where the right originates, outside of myself, and that scripture originates out of God himself because of who God is, because God is good. And that right then finds its way into protection through legislation, rather than creating a right by legislation and forcing you to obey. Anyway, those are the two sides of that. So let's move on to Satan. Oh, Lord. Yep, here we go. So this event occurred in Boston, and it was called SatanCon 2023. Yep, that's really what it was called. SatanCon, like Satan Convention, I guess, right? 2023. And we'll just spend a little bit of time on this, but I think what it illustrates, and we've talked about Satan, satanic things, and demonic worship, and there's a lot of that. I'm not even going to get too far into that today. What I want to do today instead is just review that this culture is satanic. It is demonic, and not even necessarily in the fact that some people actually worship Satan, like the people we'll see on a video in a moment, but the fact that people in culture do things that line up with the demonic. They do things that are demonic. They do things that, whether they know it or not, are the goals of Satan. The goals of this culture, the goals of this world are not the goals of God. And just by nature, by definition, if you're not for God, you are against God and therefore demonic, satanic. So these are the things that this culture is, most people don't really want to talk about, but then some people apparently do. And they just want to openly say, yeah, hail Satan. Check this out. So if you're just listening, what we're looking at is a person from the SatanCon 2023 in Boston who is just holding up a nice little Bible and ripping pages out while saying, "Hail Satan." And then they are just ripping these pages out, and they're just going through, throwing the pages on the ground, saying, "Hail Satan." And that's wonderful. Right before this, this particular person said, "We stand here today in defiance of their," I guess meaning believers, their siege and defiance of their oppression. Again, I guess believers in God, their oppression to culture. I don't know. So she ripped up the Bible. Then after this, they ripped up the thin blue line flag. So again, if you're just listening, they're holding the thin blue line flag. That's the flag that is the, the officer flag, where the line holds up the difference between, a coordinated society and chaos. That's kind of the symbol there. But here's what I want to talk about in this whole SatanCon issue. Again, I do believe some people actually worship Satan, and we've looked at some weird things that are going on in the culture. But in this particular instance, what I want to look at is, what parallels does culture actually have with this SatanCon? So listen to some of these sessions and some of these people that are giving these sessions. I just wrote down a couple here. Deconstructing Your Religious Upbringing by Judas Marduk. If that's not on the nose, I don't know what to say. Anyway, here's a couple more. Reclaiming the Trans Body, Atheistic Strategies. That's the pun. Atheistic strategies for self-determination and empowerment. Sins of the Flesh, Satanism and Self-Pleasure. Yep. Reimagining Lilith as an archetype for reproductive justice. Satanism and the BIPOC experience. And there were actually many others. Those are just some of the ones that I wrote down. But here's what I want you to hear in some of those topics from SatanCon, right, where this Church of Satan is putting on convention with seminars with such titles that we heard, and culture itself, because this is really where we live as a culture. This culture is satanic. It is demonic because we're doing all the same things as this Satan convention in our regular culture. We talk about deconstruction all the time. There are people, I was just reading some this morning, and I won't bring them in to the conversation today, but you can do a quick Google search and find all kinds of quote unquote celebrities, pastors, ex-worship musicians, and writers that have written quote unquote Christian books who now have deconstructed their faith and left Christianity entirely. That's what the Church of Satan is literally doing a seminar on. Why religion is terrible and deconstructing. You have transgenderism in these SatanCon seminars. You have hedonism. You have abortion. You have racial justice. You have intersectionality. These are all the same things that we learn about in culture every single day, that we see on the news every single day, that kids in schools are learning about. And here's a couple of things. I just happen to, I do these things so you don't have to. I went onto the website for the Satanic Temple for this SatanCon to see what they believe, because I don't know, I'm a glutton for punishment, but I wanted to know. So here are the 7 tenets. You can go and look these up. These are the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. Number 1, you should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. And see, here's the baseline, right? Reason replaces religion. In other words, you have reason, but there also is no objective reality, only what is in your mind. And this compassion, this empathy, comes from you. This is what we just talked about in the last segment. They say they replace reason and replace religion with reason. However, they're also saying it comes from you. You define you. You define your truth. So those are 2 things that are at odds. But anyway, that's one of their tenets. We'll look at another tenet. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. In other words, all institutions, all tradition should be destroyed. Again, I'm pointing to the Bible next to me, all of the institutions, all of the traditions therein that have led to church and tradition and doctrine therein, all of that should be destroyed. Okay. It says, I think this is number 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone, because all you are is your body, apparently, right? So you have this body, and you are the one who gets to control your body. But apparently all you are is your body. You don't have a soul, according to these tenets. You just have a body. So you get to do whatever you want with your body. It's just a bag of flesh or something. You have no soul. Let's keep going. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. Yeah, except for with Christianity. But let's keep going. Including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own freedom. Again, sure, as long as you're not talking about the freedom of me to say Christian things, which I'm not allowed to do in the public square, which is why we've called this church public. Or what about the freedoms of a baby you want to abort because they said abortion and reproductive health care, euphemism for abortion, or trans, like, sure. So you have all this autonomy unless you want to destroy a baby, unless you want to talk about Christianity, unless you want to be trans, or you have a child that you want to trans, just do whatever you want to them, even though a child has no ability to actually consent to any of this medical or surgical procedure. You're going to impose your will upon them and take away their freedom. But sure, you get to have whatever freedom you want until you impose it on someone else. Let's keep going. Belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. I'm sorry I'm laughing at this, but it's like it's logically broken even in this own statement, right? Belief should conform to the scientific understanding. So you can have belief, but they have to fit all of the scientific understandings. But again, what about transing the kids? That's biologically, scientifically impossible. It's not true. You're never going to make a man a woman biologically. It is not possible. But that doesn't seem to matter once you're in. And then, of course, we're also talking about the Satanic Temple, who's promoting actually Satan, I guess, even though they say they don't actually worship Satan, but whatever. So yes, match all your beliefs to science except for when you don't want to. Let's keep going. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. Okay. Keep going. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. See, here's the thing. Yeah, that sounds really nice. Sure, you should have a spirit of compassion, wisdom, justice, but where are you going to get that from? Is it from you? This is this Gnostic idea that you can unlock within yourself or within the universe some magical, mystical knowledge. But we also just heard in the previous tenet that it has to be matched by science, but sometimes it isn't. We're all over the place here at this point. Science says do the right thing and only do what science says. But also we heard that you're just a bag of meat and everything is just corporal. You don't have a soul, so you can do whatever you want with that, like trans the kids or kill your baby, depending on how you feel in that particular moment. This is the craziness of it. Like, none of this makes any sense because they're just making up words that sound good, maybe when you read them on your own. But when you really just take 2 seconds and go underneath what these words say, you go, well, how can that be? These statements are at odds even with its own statement on some of these tenets. Once you just take a second and go underneath of what is this actually saying, and really it's saying a bunch of nothing. You destroy all of tradition, but replace it with tradition unless you don't feel like replacing it with tradition. Sure, all of this makes sense to someone. I don't know. But the sad and scary thing is, this is what all of culture is doing. Satanism promotes everything that this current culture promotes. That's why we have to talk about this from a Christian perspective. This may be ridiculous when we take 4 seconds to explore what these tenets actually say and look at some of these seminars that SatanCon is promoting, but Satanism is promoting everything that this current culture is promoting by and large. Satanism and secular culture are not at odds. They agree on almost everything here. Satan, the name Satan, is the opposite of God. Just in scriptural reference, it's supposed to be the opposite of God. We can talk about the person, we can talk about the practice, but Satanism is the opposite of God, but it is the parallel. It is the exact mirror, not even mirror. It is the same as culture. Satanism is the opposite of God, but the same as culture. Because just look, they teach these values in our everyday life, in everything that you watch on TV, in every awards show, in every TV show, in every news broadcast, in every political session. And they're being taught in elementary schools across the country with cheers from the media. They talk about gender is a spectrum. They talk about why you should trans the kids. They talk about why you need to support abortion. This is in elementary schools. Why you need to support abortion, because not only is it necessary, but it's an actual good. They talk about abortion as an actual good, something that you need to make your life good, to make the world good. They talk about why you need to get rid of religion. We just heard that in the tenets, but this is in schools as well. And of course, they say just follow the science, unless it doesn't agree with what you want it to do. And of course, critical theories, and I'm not going to get all into critical theories again, but why critical theories are good, which is exactly the same ideas of Satanism that we just heard from the tenets. This is actually a great example, this whole SatanCon adventure, that secularism is defined as the opposite of traditional religion. It just is. There are people, and I keep hearing all of these people that say, well, you know, classical liberalism or secular liberalism is amazing and Christianity fits right along with it. But I hope I just showed you that liberalism, secularism does not fit with Christianity. They do not overlay. They do not align. They are at odds. They fight against each other. This Church of Satan, this satanic temple or whatever, I guess those are different things, but whatever. That's much more aligned with what is going on in the culture. And I hope at the very least you would say, maybe some of my ideas that are aligned with Satan, maybe I should rethink those. I hope at some point people wake up and say, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be aligned with Satan, but maybe people want to be. I guess they do. I guess that's the ultimate, you know, you go back to Genesis and you go into the garden and you go into that point early in Genesis when Satan comes in. Maybe we do just want to follow along with Satan's ways or with our own ways, which is in fact satanic, because we don't know what's best for us. We live in our own heads, in our own hearts. We follow our own ways. Proverbs says the heart is deceitful above all else. I mean, like these are the things that we should know about ourselves, but for some reason we just keep forgetting, or maybe we're just selfish and we want to do our own thing. And as the singer said, go your own way. So this is a great example that secularism is opposite of Christianity. Satan is the adversary against God in this original sense that we saw and we see throughout all of society right now. All of society, even into our youngest kids, schools, they're opposed to tradition. They're opposed to religion. So they have to, as we just saw in this picture, right? They have to destroy the Bible. They have to destroy the thin blue line flag. And those are the things that they have to do to destroy our symbols, to try to make our beliefs less valid. And of course they can't, because Christianity is true and you can't actually destroy truth. It is truth. And we also should know, one of the things that I was thinking of, the very first thing actually, when I saw this clip was, it's interesting how they're fighting against just one religion. Like, here is, the picture, the video of them ripping up the Bible with Christian scriptures in it, Old Testament and New Testament. I find it interesting that they're not ripping up the Quran. They're ripping the blue line flag. I noticed they're not ripping up the pride flag. I'm just going to leave that there and say, that's interesting. Yeah, they want to tear down all of this tradition, but the pride flag has a lot of tradition. The Quran has a ton of tradition. I've got the Book of Mormon on my shelf. They didn't tear that one, though that probably would be less important for them. I don't know. I just find it interesting that they didn't tear those. So we get back to secularism. It is the new religion of America and largely the West. Supernatural religion, what went before, this idea that there is a God that is beyond nature, beyond us, it's been thrown away. It's been replaced by this new religion of secularism. Just what we see, what we feel, what we touch. This supernatural religion, like Christianity, it actually covered all of society. It covered all of society in morals, in religious, in landscape. It has this God who's the creator of the universe, Genesis 1, as we just talked about. It actually allows for scientific revelation. I don't know if you know this, but many of the early scientists and the greatest scientists were actually Christians. And science was understood and it was understandable, and the human mind could comprehend it. And the predictable universe that we could understand through science had rules, and those rules applied. And most importantly, there was a God that you can know and that allowed you to understand the universe. The secular world just throws all of that away and says, hey, we're going to get rid of God. We're going to remove all the tradition. We're going to remove all objective morals and morality. You're going to just go by your feelings and figure out, whatever is right, whatever is wrong, according to you, instead of God's law. The problem is we humans have a religious brain. We have a brain that is full of theology. We have a brain that wants to worship something. We need a God, whether you want to admit it or not. This secular world has priests and priestesses and laws and standards, and if you ignore them or break them, as we've seen over and over again, you're cast into bitter darkness. You're cast into society. You're off social media. You're out of your job. You're out of your school. You have to follow or you will die. And those are the types of things that we have to see clearly. So I'll end with this. There was a video of this kid by Libs of TikTok that got he got in trouble at school for wearing a T-shirt, and this T-shirt did not agree with the secular narrative. However, he stood up and gave a fantastic speech, and I am encouraged and a little discouraged by this kid. Encouraged because he had the guts to stand up in the school, even though they were pushing against him. But I'm also discouraged because the school system is just, it seems, irreparably broken, and the parents just don't seem to see it or seem to care. Let's listen to this kid.
7th, 10th grade at Nichols Middle School. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I never thought that the shirt I wore to school on March 21st would lead me to speak with you today. On that Tuesday morning, I was taken out of gym class to sit down with 2 adults for what turned out to be a very uncomfortable talk. I was told that people were complaining about the words on my shirt, that my shirt was making some students feel unsafe. Yes, words on a shirt made people feel unsafe. They told me that I wasn't in trouble, but it sure felt like I was. I was told that I would need to remove my shirt before I could return to class. When I nicely told them that I didn't want to do that, they called my father. Thankfully, my dad supported my decisions and came to pick me up. What did my shirt say? 5 simple words. There are only 2 genders.
I paused for a second. I just love this kid. I mean, he has more courage than many other people today, and I just applaud him for wearing the shirt and for standing up for true things, because there are only 2 genders. That's funny, and it's true. Let's keep going.
Nothing harmful, nothing threatening, just a statement I believe to be a fact. I have been told that my shirt was targeting a protected class. Who is this protected class? Are their feelings more important than my rights?
Again, pause there. Great statement. There are only 2 genders. Oh, that's targeting a protected class. Who is this protected class? And are they more important than, and I would say more important than the truth? There are only 2 genders is a true statement. So if people are not just offended, but made nervous that you're attacking people through truth, I mean, this is the world we're living. Let's keep going. A couple more seconds on this kid.
I don't complain when I see pride flags and diversity posters hung throughout the school. Do you know why? Because others have a right to their beliefs just as I do. Okay.
I was so there with you, buddy. I hear what you're saying, and I understand the idea, the thought to be friendly and quote unquote inclusive, but we have to pause here for a second and say, I don't complain when I see pride flags and other things in the classroom. I have to disagree with that piece. And the reason I do is in school, you do have to teach true things. The nature of school is that you teach the true things. School should not be about teaching things that are not true. And the pride flag, the pride lifestyle, the idea that you can become another gender, the idea that marriage is between a man and a man, those are not true things. So we absolutely should not be teaching not true things in school. So I would push back against that a little bit, but I understand. I mean, this kid is crushing it so far, and it's hard to it's hard to stand on all of this at the same time because the pressure against it is so immense. Let's finish this out.
Not one person, staff, or student told me that they were bothered by what I was wearing. Actually, just the opposite. Several kids told me that they supported my actions and that they wanted one too.
I love that. Other kids are like, hey, I love your shirt. Can I get one? So he wore a shirt that said there are only two genders. And he was told he had to take his shirt off and change to participate in the school. They want to make you believe something that is not true. But we should not bow to the lies. We should not lie. Lying is not loving. People bash you over the head with this idea that you need to love your neighbor, and what that means is do whatever they want you to do. But lying is not loving. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again until we all get it. Lying to someone is not loving to them. And so we have to say true things. Yes, we have to give them grace. We have to take it individually, see where they're coming from, and walk them through a process of understanding how to love them the best. But lying to them, propagating this idea that there are more than two genders, is not loving. It is just lying. We have to and should stop lies. So to say otherwise, it's not true. This kid's shirt illustrated that fact, and he was persecuted by the truth. This only cuts one direction. And that's a point that I thought of as I was listening to this. We can have all these other things in school, the pride flag, the trans ideology, LGBTQ indoctrination, critical race theory, but we can't have the Bible in school. So when you say, well, we should be able to teach all of these things in school or whatever we want in school, obviously we can't, because we've been told you can't teach the Bible in school, even though it is true historically and spiritually. We can't have prayer in school anymore, even though God is real. And when we say we don't want books with pornography in them, we are the bigots, and we are the ones who are book burners trying to stop the learning. You will be slandered if you stand for the truth, but that's just what it is. Slander, lies about you, because they can't attack your ideas. They can only lie because they know in the end you are right. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and as always, I hope that you will keep the faith.